Hello again, everyone. I'm Tom Nagorski with the Cipher Brief. Great to have you with us. We are here. We've been tackling a lot of the global security challenges facing the new Trump administration lately. We turn today to a big one, and that is Iran, the policy challenges, the choices that the new administration may face. We're joined today by someone with a lot of experience with that country and policy towards Iran, and that is Paula Doyle, who joins us today from Virginia. She's a former chief of operations for the CIA's Iran Operations Division, among many other posts she held during her career with the agency. Great to have you with us, Paula. And you and many others among our expert community have written and spoken recently about the changes that have come to Iran in the past, I guess, year or 18 months or so, and how weakened, and some might even say wounded, the country is. Before we get to a policy matter, can you just give us an idea of what's meant by that? How badly beaten up, really, is Iran as a regional player as a result of events in the last year or so?
Yeah, I would say it's very significant. And one of the things that I would observe about the Davos events last week, which gave the Iranian Vice President Javad Zarif a platform
Right.
to speak. I think if you peel through all of the sophistry and the theatrics of how he was trying to rebrand and relabel how Iran sees itself in the world, um, you see a man who is, in my view, begging for re-engagement.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen the Davos speech or interview with Zakaria, you might take 20 minutes to take a look at it. There, this is a man that has been part of the negotiating world of Iran for many, many years, and he has also been in and out of power, re-stressing that um, the worst day that could happen for him is to go back to university and teach. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you listen to him and again peel away the stuff about how successful Iran is and how powerful it's been in defending the rights of Palestinian statehood, he has tried to reframe Iran's relationships in the region. I don't think he did a very persuasive job.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to reframe the success of Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis in a couple of different ways by saying, "Oh, they have their own agency. They're doing what they need to do to protect their missions, and they're not working at our behest." Of course, that's false. But he also tried to reframe, we are tough, we are strong, we are resilient, we will continue to pay, we will continue to pay in blood, sweat, tears, and money. So there were, when I look at that, I see an Iranian official that the supreme leader clearly let leave Iran to try to reframe a very weak Iran,
Mm-hmm.
and an economy that is crushed. My expat friends who fly back and forth to Iran pretty regularly tell me that there are brownouts all around the country. The youth are doing what they want to do when they want to do it. The religious police seem to have lost their not not their power. They still are an instrument of power. They have guns. They have brutality, but they don't seem to be using it.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Qom and Mashhad, which are pretty religious, conservative, pious centers.
Right.
So there's this, I believe there's a reframe, there's an attempt by Iran to reframe how it sees itself in the world. And I think his message, obviously, he was talking to a domestic audience, but he was also talking to a crushed Hezbollah, a crushed Hamas, and what will be, if we keep it up, a crushed Houthi.
Right, right. And he's also, right, we should say, although our audience probably knows, that Javad Zarif for a long time, and he's been, as you said, he's been a face for the rest of the world for the regime in Tehran for a very long time. And to your point about a weakened position now, he very often was coming and speaking with a kind of bravado and not, as you say, begging. Well, let's say it's a very useful jumping off point then, Paula, for what the West ought to do about this. I mean, I was struck also that of course, Davos is where it is. So he was making his case to the Europeans, and that may be a more friendly ear, I guess, for some of the things he was saying. But from a perspective of where we sit in this country and the new administration, there are some who would suggest that it's a moment to seize on that weakness and go for a deal on the nuclear issue that would be more favorable than the 2015 deal was. And there are others who a bit more hardline, or quite a bit more hardline, who's saying, you know what, this is an opportunity to take a shot militarily at some of the elements of the program, or at least support Israel in doing that. Assess, if you can, those options or others.
So, I'm going to go back to a little bit of context here too. Zarif cannot say that Iran is operating from a stronger position after having lost Assad and its Russian allies in Syria. This is really important.
Yeah.
But it's not their style to come forward in a public venue to say, okay, we're kind of on our backs right now. Don't expect Iran to cry uncle whether we engage or thump.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the Supreme Leader's DNA. Americans and other listeners, you just need to know how resilient that part of the world is. The capacity for suffering is much greater than anything you would find in the United States. But so anything that happens that can be a breakthrough on the negotiation side needs to be done in private. For eons, our best strategies with Iran have been in private. In private, you can look for cracks in the facade and you can begin to shape and mold. If you try to do it in public, you're just going to steel everybody up, stiffen their backs, and you could get some very, very unproductive outcomes. What I would say about what comes next, don't make the mistake again of separating Iran's terrorism activities from its quest for a nuclear weapons program. In my view, the shot clock on that operating premise it's expired. It's done.
Mm-hmm.
If you look back at the decision to separate those two in 2014, 2015, Iran ramped up its support for Hezbollah. It ramped up its support for Hamas. It ramped up the violence against the West and with the Houthis. It reinforced Khattab Hezbollah in Iraq. It was well intentioned. I understand that, but it didn't work.
So can I just
emboldened Iran? So my view, you got to bring both pieces of that together, whether you're in a diplomatic discussion or a thumping discussion.
So just to take a few threads, super helpful points you're making here, and maybe take them together from answer number one to answer number two here, which is, I believe that, but you know better than me, that back in the run up to the 2015, 2014 talks and the negotiations and the deal, that they couldn't marry those things together. Or we don't have to revisit history here, but it was very, very hard given the position that the Iranians were bringing to the table to, and so yes, they made a choice to separate the issues of nuclear program, support for militants and terrorists. Do you think, given your phrase about, their top negotiator or Western facing official coming to Davos and begging for some good ears and help here, that then does provide a moment to say, okay, we'll come back here, but you need to understand that these things now need to be both on the table when we have these talks?
Yeah, I think they first of all, they deserve to be on the table together. They have hurt U.S. personnel, allied personnel. They have killed U.S. personnel. They have killed allied personnel. There should be a price for that. Iran's use of force and violence through through proxies, through resistance, whatever you want to call it. It's Iran's long arm. It is the IRGC's long arm. Javad doesn't want to talk about that. In fact, he goes, no, we are not that. They are not proxies. He rejected that term outright. He has to reject that term in order to get where the supreme leader wants to be.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. You can't follow that line of logic because it is illogical.
Now, you talked about back channel, quiet negotiations and diplomacy. We know from Trump's first administration, he has a penchant in some cases for quite public. I'm thinking now about negotiations with the North Korean leader that were, so dramatic and unprecedented in every way. We're hearing now that he's planning I think a face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin, although the details are not known. I take it from what you're saying that you would not in any way recommend right now a meeting of President Trump with his counterpart in Iran in any public fashion until a lot of other things happen. Is that right?
President Trump's counterpart is not Pezeshkian.
Right.
So the notion of a U.S. president meeting with the supreme leader needs a bit of thought.
Might need a lot of thought in Tehran too, right?
And where would that meeting be? When was the last time the supreme leader traveled outside of Iran?
Yeah.
I do not believe our president, no matter who our president is, should be flying into Tehran.
Right.
It sends all the wrong messages. Yeah. When the deal is done, when the deal is struck, when we establish an embassy there again, that's a different story altogether.
In the time that's left, Paula, can I ask you, we've skated past something I said at the outset, perhaps because it may not be on the table right now, I don't know, obviously, which is the military option, right? How realistic do you think it is that either the Israelis with tacit American support or that the United States, if something were to, if there'd be an uptick in terms of some kind of tension or conflict with Iran, that folks will say, okay, because they're so weakened, because their response capability is so poor at the moment, good time to go and as I said at the outset, take a shot at some elements of the program.
So, governments always have choices. If you go the diplomatic route, you choose some things. If you go the military action piece, the military action piece would probably be looking at not just the nuclear program, but the ability to deliver a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I am in a panel or in front of my students at Georgetown, I always urge them to look at the delivery systems over the actual warhead. We are not aware, as far as I know, that Iran has developed a warhead capability.
Mm-hmm.
This is really sophisticated stuff.
Yep.
So if they should, however, get some help, and they have friends with nuclear programs who may or may not be willing to help. I can think of a couple that would be willing to help. Mm-hmm. Then what we really need to focus on is Iran's ability to project power outside of its borders.
Right.
In an age of sovereignty, which I firmly believe in, everyone has its right to self-defense. Everyone does not have the right to attack someone else from within your borders. Mm-hmm. Iran has a long history of attacking others in its region. Imagine a nuclear-armed Iran. This is terrifying. Mm-hmm. They do not have the training, the doctrine, the knowledge of the technology of what they could have on their hands. They are not like the Perm 5. The Perm 5 has spent decades developing the technology, the doctrine, the training, how we move them, where we move them, how we manage diplomatic channels so there are no misunderstandings. Iran's not part of any of that.
Yep.
So rather than risking a nuclear warhead on a missile, I would focus on the missile complexes. We know exactly where they are. It's really hard to have a missile complex and hide it under the ground. And so I would imagine, I do not know, I've been out of government now for 8 years. I would imagine that war planners are very, very good at knowing where the missile capabilities are. Some of the bigger drones that could carry something heavy enough to carry nuclear material. So I would urge listeners to contemplate what an attack might look like if it really just went after
Yeah.
mostly the missile
The
complex.
delivery system. Yeah. So last question, Paula, back to where we started in a way, coming full circle. How confident are you or are you not that given Iran's current state and the posture of the Trump administration, that there's a chance for some negotiated deal along any of the lines you've just been talking about?
I always believe there's a possibility for a deal. I do. Cracks and fissures happen all the time. And it is our if our instinct and our policy is to drive a new deal, then do it. Drive it. But
Mm-hmm.
drive it from a perspective of all of Iran. I think, as I said before, this notion that you can do a nuclear deal over here and Iran gets to do terrorism over here has proven to be very damaging to our national security and to the security of the Middle East. And we have a lot of friends and neighbors in the Middle East.
Yep.
So it's a beautiful opportunity. Every change of administration is an opportunity to kind of reset, rethink, pull things back, try some new things. Just if we know what the cracks and fissures are. Hezbollah has been decapitated. Hamas has been decapitated, at least on the leadership side. They will come back. Make
Mm-hmm.
no bones about that. They will come back.
All right, we're going to need to leave it there, but I like that you brought us back to, I think you said, a beautiful opportunity or something like that,
It's always a beautiful opportunity to do a deal.
and it's always good to end on a positive note. Paula Doyle, thank you so much for being with us as always at the Cipher Brief. Really appreciate it.
You're so welcome.